Hey guys, it's Beth and welcome back to my channel. And today is the debut of the new June 2020 Flavor of the Month card kit called A Walk in the Park. Before I get started into my cards today, I thought I'd show you what's in each collection. This is collection number 1 called Picnic Time. Some cute, fun summertime patterns with picnic theme and some polka dots and ants. Collection number 2 is called Let's Hang Out. And so it's got monkeys and bananas and kind of the brown and yellow theme to it. And that super cute stamp set says, "Let's hang out 6 feet apart." And it's got the monkeys hanging out on the monkey bars. That's like a perfect sentiment for right about now as we're starting to get back into socializing with everyone. Collection number 3 is called Pond Life. And it's got like frogs and like the lily pad flowers, whatever those are called. And then this stamp set is actually designed by one of our own design team members. And then collection number 4 is On the Playground. And so it's just got some fun, playful patterns to it and another cute stamp set. And then you would also get the cardstock, which I don't show you, the cardstock pieces and the envelopes. And then if you get the banana split level, you would also get this stencil, grass and clouds, along with a tag die set, some mini bottles of Nouveau drops, and then some sequins. So that is the kit, and now we will get into making some cards. So I'm starting out with one of the card sketches on the sketch sheet. And it's the Scrapping for Less card sketch, kind of at the top right. And for this card, I am using collection number 1. So I've pulled out a brown card base, which I made from one of the cardstock pieces in the kit, and then the yellow polka dot paper, and then some of the striped paper to make my strips along the side. And I'm just using some Nouveau wet glue to apply these down. I did take a piece of brown cardstock and used one of my own stitch circle dies to cut a circle, and then I'm using one of the ephemera pieces from the kit to put in the center of the circle, letting that dry. And then we'll just use some ATG to attach the card mat to the card base. And then I'm going to be using the sentiment that says, life needs more, like picnics and polka dots, I think is what it says. Which is why I chose the polka dot pattern for my card mat. And I'm just mounting this on some brown cardstock to help it kind of pop out a little bit more. So then I'm going to center my circle element there on the middle of the card, and I'm just using some adhesive foam squares to pop it up just a little bit. And then we'll use my Nouveau to put my sentiment down. And then I decided to pull out, there were some clear enamel dots that came with this kit, and so I just decided to pull those, a few of those out and put them around my card. That's card number 1. Super cute. So for card number 2, I'm not using a sketch, but I had an idea of what I might want to do to use some of the ephemera pieces in collection number 1. So I just pulled out that striped paper, what I had left after making the strips for card number 1. And then the lemonade drink, their pattern paper there is like a scrap of another paper that I'd already used. And so I'm trying to find 3 ephemera pieces. I knew I wanted the ant, the watermelon, and one of the lemonades, and then end up pulling out another one of the lemonade drinks as well to put on that white strip. So I decided to round the corners on that white strip just to help it stand out a little bit more. And now I'm just placing my scrap pieces down directly onto my white card base. And I decided that I wanted to add some extra cardstock behind that right-hand side of my white strip, just so when it kind of drooped down a little bit on the right side. So I was just trying to level that out, and then we'll be using some of that Nuvo glue to put my ephemera pieces down. So while that dries, I'm going to work on my sentiment, and I'm going to go back to that same stamp I used in the last one, that life needs more polka dots and picnics. And my black ink pad is very dry. I need to re-ink it because it's not very juicy. So I struggled to get it to stamp very well this time. But I'm going to add fishtails to both sides and then try and figure out how, like where I want to place it at the bottom of the card. I thought I would just center it, but then it looked kind of weird with that strip of the lemonade drinks going down the side. So I decided to pull out another scrap of that yellow polka dot and kind of back it with that. And then I decided that the white strip at the top needed something else. So I just used a black fine, ultra fine point tip marker from my stash and added some faux stitching around it. And then I'm also pulling out a bottle of Nuvo drops that I got from Scrapping for Less, and I believe they were like something watermelon. Don't have anything over here in front of me, but so that's card number 2. So for card number 3, I decided to play around a little bit, and I pulled out the stencil, and I'm making a grass border at the bottom of my white cardstock. So once I get the grass stenciled in, I'm just adding a little bit more of my ink to the bottom to help fill it in and make it a little darker. And now I'm going to stamp the monkeys on the monkey bars. And again, I'm going to have to re-ink. I'm going to have to ink up the stamp several times to get it to stamp clear enough because of that dry pad that I'm using, which is why I use my Misty a lot in this video. So once I have that done, I'm going to be using that Operation Right Home sketch number 55 that's at the bottom left of our sketch sheet for this month. And I'm just pulling out some scrap pieces that I think might fit. Because I knew I wanted to use the monkey pattern, and then just went with a more of a solid color brown and yellow pattern to kind of help ground the card a little bit, since there would be too much white. So I'm going to go ahead and get my card base made, all those scrap pieces on the card. And then we'll come back to my little monkeys. And I pull out one of my Prismacolor markers, and it's a gray, a light gray, and I chose this gray because it has a fine tip to it, and so it made it easier for me to color in like those skinny metal bars that were on the monkey bars. And the Prismacolor color that I was using, it's called French Gray. And so here to color the monkeys in, I'm using another Prismacolor Premier marker, and it is light umber. And again, I mainly chose this one because it was the only brown I had that had the small, like a really small fine tip. So it made it easy to color in the details of these small images. But then I do also pull out one of my Copics, and I'm using, actually it's not, it's Studio 71 is what the marker is from, and it's like a beige YR3. I just wanted like a tan to color in their faces. And then I'm not doing a whole lot of shading on here, but I do go back to that French Gray marker and add an extra layer on the top corners of the monkey bars, just to help those, the connector pieces, stand out a little bit more. So now to add my sentiment, I'm going back to my Misty just because of my dry ink pad. I want to make sure I can re-ink it a couple times if I need to. And it's the sentiment, let's hang out 6 feet apart, which came with this collection. So now that element is finally done. So I just been using some ATG to attach it. And then decide to pull out some of the enamel dots that came with this set collection as well. So what is that, card number 3? So for card number 4, I'm going on to collection number 3. And I pulled out the stamp, or the pond stamp, or puddle. I'm assuming it's a pond since it's Pond Life. And I used my Distress Oxide ink in Broken China to add. It's like the only like light blue pad that I have. And so I stamped it in that blue, and then I'm stamping the frog in my Mowed Lawn Distress ink. And I'm going to do a little bit of coloring on the frog as well. And again, I'm not doing a lot of shading or even using multiple colors. I'm just trying to add a little color to the image to help it stand out. And I'm using the Copic sketch marker on this one in the color Yellow Green YG03. And I don't have very many greens, so I couldn't do a whole lot of shading if I wanted to. So I'm just kind of going back over certain spots just to help them stand out a little bit more. And then I am going to fussy cut out the frog. Because my thought was to create a little scene with the frog sitting in the pond. So I'm just trying to figure out where I might attach him. And then I'm using a card sketch for this card, and it's not one that came on our sketch sheet. It's one from my stash, and it's my favorite thing, sketch number 352. And so then I'm just trying to figure out what pattern do I want to use for my background, what do I want to use for the strip. And then I'm trimming down my little stamped image there. And then I'm using the sentiment in this, one of the sentiments from this stamp set, and it says, "You're totally awesome." I'm a sucker for a good pun, so I loved that one. And again, I have to stamp it several times before my stamp pad lets me have a nice, crisp, clear stamp. And then I just used a 1-inch circle punch to punch it out, and then I think it's like a 1 1/4 inch scallop circle to back it with some green cardstock. So now I get to start putting everything down, and I do go ahead and use some of the Nouveau on my little frog so that he can be drying. And then we'll put the rest of my card layers together. And then in the process, I decided that I really wanted to back that stamped image on something else. So I pulled out a scrap of green cardstock to mount that. And at this point, I had run out of my ATG, had ran out, and I didn't feel like running back over to my regular craft desk to get some more. So I'm just going to finish up this card with the Nouveau. And then I realized I need something underneath the left half of my sentiment as it hangs off of my little focal image there. So I'm just using some tiny scrap pieces of green cardstock to fix that. And then I wanted to bring in another pop of color somewhere. So I tried the little yellow flowers that came in the collection and then opted to go just for some sequins instead. I love the little spiral sequins that we get from in the Scrapping for Less kits, and so I pulled out the peach ones. And these sequins are part of the banana split level. I loved how the peach ones popped, and I love those little spiral, the detail on those spirals. So that was card number 4. For card number 5, I'm using another sketch from my stash, and it's Mojo Monday 361. So I knew what patterned papers I wanted to use for this, but I hadn't really thought about a card base. So I tried the turquoise and realized that wasn't going to work, and then opted for black. And then I'm going to pull out some scraps of white cardstock to make some mats for my pattern papers. And I do pull out a quarter rounder to round the corners of the smaller square piece and the mat. And then I wanted a strip that kind of pulled in multiple colors to go across the middle there. So I went for the one that has they're not really diamonds. Don't really remember what shape, but like all the little geometric shapes that have the multiple colors from the kit. I love how it pulled all the colors together. So now I'm just adhering my mat pieces to my card base, and then the strip will go on next. And so I realized I wanted something on that right-hand side to keep the strip from drooping too much and to help keep my other smaller square piece level as well. So you'll see that I use a lot of scrap pieces of cardstock throughout this video to layer underneath things. It's like I don't need a full foam strip height. I just need just a little, like half that. So I tend to go for the cardstock scraps instead. So here from that collection, I'm using the little sailboat and the sentiment that says, "Hope you're doing well." And I'm going to use a 1.5 inch circle punch to punch it out. And I realized I didn't leave enough space to get an even punch around my sentiment. So I had to restamp and then got it punched out. And then I end up pulling in another scalloped punch and some green cardstock here in a bit. I'm going to put my strip down and then can put that other square piece. And again, realized wanted something in the corners, the outside corners with that square piece. Keep it all nice and level. So this method of trying to keep things level is maybe a little more time consuming, but it's a little more fiscally responsible, because, you know, it is using scraps that I would normally be throwing away anyway. So, oh, and I ended up not going for green. I went for a turquoise scallop to mat my sentiment there. So now I can put it down, and guess what? I'm pulling in a little more scrap cardstock to layer behind it as well. And then decide that it needed a little bit more of something. So I pull out the enamel dots from this kit. It's like a really pale peach. And just add the tiny ones, kind of, I follow the circle shape kind of around the top right of my sentiment there. And now my card is finally done. So for the next card, I'm using a Case the sketch, and it's number 34. And I'm sticking with this collection number 3. I really wanted to use that frog paper, or the toad paper, I guess. And so I thought this one would be perfect because it ends up being the focal point on the card. And I'm going back to the sentiment that says, "You are totally awesome." And I changed my mind on the strip of paper that goes underneath my frog paper. Realized I wanted more of a solid. So I do another small circle punch with a scallop behind it for my sentiment. And then can start putting everything down onto my card base. And my card base is just from the green cardstock that came in the kit. So I did round the corners of that frog paper and the white mat behind it. And then put the final pieces on. Just love the frogs. Super cute. Toads. I don't always know the difference, but I just know that these little guys are very cute. And again, using teeny tiny scraps to help level out my sentiment circle. And there's card number 6. So for card number 7, I finally move on to collection number 4. And I'm using the My Favorite Thing sketch number 188 from the bottom right of our sketch sheet. And since you've already seen me do it in this video already, I went ahead and did use the stencil to make some more grass on some white cardstock. And I'll also stamped the slide that came in the stamp set from this collection and colored it in some cool grays from Copic. I used cool gray number 5, so C5 and C3, which is cool gray number 3. And instead of making a square card, I'm just doing a normal A2 size card turned horizontally. So here I did my slide and fussy cut it out, and so I'm just adding it to that white piece that I had done the grass on. And I'm stamping this, trying to stamp the sentiment, "The world is your playground," and it takes me several tries to get it nice and clear. And so I go ahead and stamp it directly onto that piece with my slide. And now I can start putting everything down. It's like I love that bicycle paper, so I wanted to be sure to use it somehow. Here I go again, layering some cardstock behind my focal point. And since the sketch called for a circle element kind of at the bottom right, and I had already done my sentiment as part of my focal point with the slide, I decided to pull in one of the yellow flowers that came in collection number 3, just for an extra pop of a color other than turquoise. And so I just used Nuvo to glue that flower down. And there's card number 7. So for card number 8 and my final card, I'm using Freshly Made Sketches number 179. And then decided on this one to go with more of a, not that that's a calmer background because that purple chevron's pretty wild, but a less playful background. But then it did want to pull in a little bit of playfulness, so I decided to use the arrow pattern, which was on the back of some scraps that I had left from that first card I made from this one. So again, I'd already stamped my slide and colored it in off camera just because this video was already getting long. So I'm still using the Smile, the World is Your Playground sentiment. And I want to put it kind of at the top left and realize that it needs some pop of color behind it. And so I end up pulling in another scrap of that arrow paper with the yellow background. And even though you can't really tell that it's arrows behind it, you can see that yellow and it kind of blends in, or it kind of, I guess, not blends in, but matches. So then I end up adding a fishtail to it as well. And can get that glue down. I love the playfulness of this collection. It's just different from what I normally work with, so it's just kind of a nice, fun change of pace. So I will link the products that I've used in the description box below, as well as where you can subscribe to the monthly kits if you'd like. And then to finish off this card, I decided to pull in some more yellow. So I'm pulling out the yellow sequins, some of the yellow sequins from this collection. And once I get those down, card number 8 will be finished. But hopefully you guys got some good ideas and inspiration on how to use your kit for this month. And be sure to check out who's behind me in the hop. Their link will be in the description box below. So you can check them out, as well as follow everyone else who's in the hop and get some more ideas. I love how everybody uses the same supplies, the same papers and embellishments to come up with some totally different and unique cards, and everybody always does an amazing job. So here's one final look at the 8 cards that I made today. If you have a favorite, let me know. I think I'm torn between 3. I love that one where the slide has the yellow flower, like the card number 7, and then I love the toad card there. That's kind of at the top right in this picture. And then the monkeys. I like how that one came out. So if you have a favorite, oh, and I like the ant too, which is my very first card. I guess I don't really have a favorite. I like a lot of them. So let me know if you have a favorite and if you have any questions. But thank you guys so much for your time today. Be sure to check out the rest of the participants in the hop and to check out the Flavor of the Month kit from Scrapping for Less. Hope you're having a crafty day. Bye for now.